Taoiseach, there are many disturbing and unacceptable aspects to the homelessness crisis, but I think undoubtedly one of the worst of them is the number of children living in homeless situations. And really, I mean, it's difficult to overstate how much the state is letting children down who are having to endure emergency accommodation and homelessness, particularly for long periods of time. I mean, I'm aware of one case, I've raised it multiple times in here, of a young woman with her son who's been in homeless accommodation for 4 years. 4 years. Now, I would just ask that there is some priority put on looking at those in homeless accommodation. I mean, nobody should be there, frankly, and it's a failing of the state that they are. But people who are in for lengthy periods of time, and what the state, particularly with children, what the state is going to do to forensically audit those that are in that situation, and what additional efforts the state is going to make to help those families and those children in particular to get out of that situation, because it is absolutely unacceptable that children should be for long periods of time in this appalling situation. And the damage it is doing to children is going to be lifelong, Taoiseach. So I want to ask you to focus on that particular aspect and tell us what you can or are willing to do to address that unacceptable situation.
In relation to Deputy Boyd Barrett's question, in relation to families with children who are in emergency accommodation for a prolonged period, for years, as he puts it, I agree that's not acceptable. It's unacceptable that anyone should be in emergency accommodation for a prolonged period, and particularly unacceptable that anyone should be in emergency accommodation for several years. I will we'll raise it at the Housing Committee, which will be happening next week, and with Minister O'Brien, and I agree they should be prioritised, but I do think we would need to do, and it's probably been done already, but I'm not sure, do a drill down into some of the more details behind why people are in emergency accommodation for such a prolonged period of time. I know of some cases where accommodation was offered but turned down. I'm sure that's not the case in all or even most cases, but it is the case in some cases, and that is different. And in some cases, families may not be eligible for social housing because they're from overseas and may not be eligible for social housing at all. So there are different circumstances, and I think we need to drill that down, understand better why people might be in emergency accommodation for such a prolonged period of time, which shouldn't happen, and I agree they should be prioritised.